Thank you for being here today. Your likes and subscriptions really means a lot.
He spent months perfecting his speech, completely unaware that I had swapped the files. While he stands there soaking up the applause, I'm hitting play on the evidence of his betrayal. This isn't just a divorce, it's the total destruction of his reputation in front of every colleague he knows. 300 guests, 12 investors, and one CEO sat through exactly 60 seconds of my husband's promotion video before it started playing something else. But there was one thing in that ballroom I could not control: a woman in a navy dress at table 9. She had a phone in her lap and every reason in the world to stop me. Nobody else in that room knew who she was. I did. I had been pouring her coffee for months. And the ballroom is not even where this starts. It starts with a hotel room booked under my own name. We will come back to that. By the end, you will understand why the first 60 seconds of that video had to be completely real. And you will hear the 5 words Edgar whispered to me in the lobby when it was all over. 3 weeks before the gala, Edgar stood in front of our bedroom mirror in a tuxedo he had not paid for yet. It was almost midnight. I was holding his phone up at chest height because he wanted a teleprompter angle. "Higher, Helen, and stop breathing so loud. I can hear it on the recording." He ran the speech 11 times that night. 11. When I lowered my arms on the 9th run, he snapped his fingers at me. Snapped his fingers like I was a waiter. This speech is the summit of my life. Act like it. 2 days later, he canceled our anniversary dinner by text. Not a call. A text while I was already sitting at the restaurant. War room prep with the team. Don't wait up. The waiter took away the second glass, and I ate alone next to a candle I blew out myself. That same week, he sent me to pick up his tuxedo alterations. He called me twice on the way to make sure I used the garment bag, not a hanger. At the shop, the tailor brought out 2 bags. The second one held a cocktail dress, deep red, size 4. I have not been a size 4 since 1998. "There must be a mistake," I told the tailor. He checked the ticket. "No mistake. Mr. Parrish paid for both. He said his wife would collect them." The dress went on our card as gala wardrobe. I drove home with it laid across the back seat like a body. When I asked Edgar about it that night, he did not even blink. Client gift. Redmond's people expect gestures. Hang it in the guest closet and don't wrinkle it. Then he turned back to his speech cards and held out his empty glass for a refill without looking at me. That Thursday, I was wiping down the kitchen counter when the old family tablet lit up next to the fruit bowl. Edgar had upgraded his phone in the spring. I set the new one up for him because he could never be bothered. He never unlinked his messages from the tablet. His arrogance never let him imagine he needed to. The banner sat right there on the screen. M. Sawyer Consulting. Wore the red one you bought. The room feels empty without you. 11:42 at night, the exact night of his war room prep. I did not call him. I did not throw the tablet. I wiped the counter until it shined, made his coffee for the morning, and set his vitamins next to the mug in a neat little row. Then I sat down and read every message going back 4 months. And what I did with that hotel room left the whole ballroom silent. Hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the ending, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. There were hundreds, room numbers, wine orders, jokes about me. In one message, he called me the furniture. She sent back 3 laughing faces. The furniture, 22 years of marriage, and I was a couch. It got more specific than that. He told her what I cooked on Sundays so they could laugh at it. He photographed my grocery list once and captioned it the prisoner's menu. And in March he wrote, "After the promotion, everything changes. Lawyer says wait until the equity clears." She answered with a champagne emoji. So there it was, in writing. He was not just cheating, he was waiting. The plan was the promotion first, the equity second, and the divorce papers third, with me finding out in whatever order suited him. The next morning, I opened our shared cloud account on my laptop. I set that up for him too. His new phone had been backing up every photo and every video automatically since spring, straight into the family album, right next to pictures of our garden. He never checked. Checking was beneath him. There was a folder dated from a hotel weekend in June. I clicked the first video. 4 seconds, a hotel robe. Meredith Sawyer's laugh, a room I had never been in. I closed the laptop and stopped the video right there. I sat on the laundry room floor for a long time with one of his gym socks still in my hand. On the dryer above my head sat a framed photo from our wedding that had hung in 3 different houses. I folded the sock. Then I went back to the laptop and I downloaded everything, every file, onto a little silver drive from the junk drawer. The receipts came next. Our credit card statements went to a shared email folder. Sorting the family bills was my job, one of my invisible jobs, and I had been sorting them for 2 years without once seeing what I was looking at. His work charges went on the corporate line. I never opened that column. It said Redmond Capital, so I filed it and moved on, the way I filed everything. I opened that column now. The Grandview Hotel in Springdale, over and over. Dinners for $840. A spa package for 2 on the weekend. He skipped my niece's christening for a conference. A bracelet from a jeweler downtown, $3,200. For my last birthday, Edgar gave me a blender. And every single Grandview charge was labeled the same way in his expense notes. Client entertainment. He was billing part of the affair to Redmond Capital. He was cheating on me and making his company help pay for it. Then the affair walked into my kitchen. Meredith Sawyer, brand consultant for the promotion campaign, hired by Edgar himself to polish his image before the gala. She came on a Tuesday with color-coded binders and a smile you could sell toothpaste with. She took my favorite mug off the shelf without asking. She sat in my chair. "Sweetie, could you make lunch reservations for the team?" she asked me, in my own house. Then she looked at my dress. "For the gala, the wives usually wear something neutral. We don't want to pull focus." My own house. She reached for a binder and her sleeve slid up. The bracelet. The $3,200 bracelet from the statement, right there on her wrist, 3 feet from my coffee pot. My hand stopped on the handle for 1 second. Then I poured her coffee, nice and slow, and I smiled. "Cream, sweetie." The gala itself had become its own religion in our house. This was not just a promotion. Bradley Redmond was naming Edgar Chief Operating Officer of Redmond Capital in front of every investor the firm had at a black tie ceremony in the Grandview's Grand Ballroom. There was equity attached. There was a magazine cover attached. Edgar had a countdown app on his phone. He hired a videographer to make a highlight reel about his own career. 8 minutes of Edgar shaking hands, Edgar cutting ribbons, Edgar in slow motion. He made me watch the drafts at dinner. 3 times. When I reached for the remote after the second viewing, he pulled it out of my reach. "Notes, Helen. I need notes, not commentary." Then I found the seating chart on the counter. My sister was crossed off with 1 line of black pen. "We needed the seats for the consulting team," Edgar said, not even looking up from his phone. "Family can visit anytime, investors can't." The consulting team. Meredith and her binders got my sister's chair, and he told me not to talk to Bradley Redmond at the gala unless Redmond spoke first. "You have a habit of telling little stories. This night has to be clean." 2 nights later, he made me rehearse. Actually rehearse. He stood at the head of the dining table pretending it was a podium and had me practice the moment the spotlight would swing to the family table. "Chin up, hands together, eyes wet but not crying. Grateful. Can you do grateful?" I did grateful. He made me do it again. On the 3rd try, he nodded like a coach cutting a player a break. "Better. Remember, when they applaud me, you stand first. You start the standing ovation. That's your whole job Saturday." My whole job? I looked at this man I had ironed shirts for since I was 26, and I said, "I won't miss my cue." It was the only honest thing said at that table all night. That Friday, I drove to the Grandview myself. I told Edgar I was finalizing linens for the head table. He waved me off without looking up. Wives handle linens. That was exactly the size of me in his head, and for once that size was useful. The grand ballroom was half set up. Gold chairs in stacks, a stage, and 2 LED screens the size of my garage door. Under the biggest one, a woman in a work polo stood on a ladder with a cable in her teeth, quietly cursing the mounting bracket. The name on her badge said Esther Sutton. Somebody in a suit stuck his head in and told her the ceiling lift was canceled again, do it by hand. She climbed down and steadied herself on the ladder. "3rd weekend in a row," she said to nobody. "They sold my calibration day to a car show, and corporate still cut our overtime." I handed her the coffee I had bought in the lobby and hadn't touched. She looked at me like free coffee was a trick. Then she took it. We talked about the screens for a minute, just small talk, and she asked which event I was with. "The Redmond Gala? I'm Helen Parrish." She stopped with the cup halfway to her mouth. Something moved behind her eyes. "Parrish," she repeated, "like the 1140 Parish." My whole body went cold, but I kept my voice flat. I told her my husband stayed at the hotel sometimes, on business. Esther looked at me for a long, careful second. Then she got down off the ladder, walked me over to the service desk in the corner, and glanced around before she turned the monitor my way. "I shouldn't show you this," she said, "but housekeeping has been joking about 11:40 for a year. The do not disturb room, I figured his wife knew." The booking history filled the screen. Room 1140. 31 stays, going back 2 years. 2 years. Late checkouts, champagne to the room, the same wine every time. And there was a name attached to every single reservation, holding the loyalty points, catching any awkward questions if they ever came. Not Edgar Parrish. He was too careful for that and too cheap to waste the points. 31 nights. Every single one of them booked under my name. I stood at that service desk and read the list twice. 31 check-ins. Loyalty points piling up in an account with my name on it at a hotel I had never slept in. Esther scrolled down one more screen. "It gets stranger," she said. "The guest uses the name too. Front desk calls her Mrs. Parrish. Housekeeping calls her Mrs. Parrish. Tuesday check-in, Thursday checkout. The girls in laundry call her the Tuesday wife." The Tuesday wife. Meredith Sawyer had been walking through that lobby signing my name for 2 years, getting my welcome fruit, earning my points. That was why Esther froze when I introduced myself. As far as the Grandview computer knew, I was already a regular. I asked Esther if pulling that screen up could cost her her job. She snorted and shut the monitor off. "They're closing my whole department after this quarter, outsourcing the AV work to a contractor. 11 years, and I found out from a group email with a smiley face in it." She walked me out through the loading dock so nobody would see me leave crying. Except I wasn't crying. She noticed that too. At the door she stopped and looked at me straight. "Whatever you're going to do," she said, "don't do it stupid. Paper first, feelings later." Paper first. I drove home and started a folder. Edgar had left a list taped to the fridge. 14 items numbered in his block handwriting. Confirm florist. Confirm photographer. Pressed tuxedo shirt, light starch, not medium. And item 9, circled twice, book suite for consulting team. Grandview, bill to house account. I called the hotel that evening while he watched his highlight reel in the den. The reservations girl was chirpy. "Of course, Mrs. Parrish. Should I put it under your name as usual?" As usual, I closed my eyes. "Yes," I said, "room 1140 if it's available." "Oh, it's available. It's your usual room." She said it warm and friendly, like we were old pals. I booked my husband's affair suite for his promotion night on our house account, and then I went in and refilled his glass. Monday morning, Meredith annexed my dining room. She called it the command center. She moved my grandmother's china hutch a foot to the left because it crowded the whiteboard. She threw my fresh flowers in the trash, vase water and all, and announced she had allergies. Then she ate my lunch out of the refrigerator. The container had my name on it. She left the fork in the sink. By Wednesday, she had a key. I found out when the alarm chirped at 7:40 in the morning and she walked into my kitchen mid-phone call, pointing at the coffee maker like a customer. Edgar had copied her a key to my house and mentioned it to me never. "Sweetie," she said, hanging up, "small favor. The red dress in the guest closet needs a steam. It's couture, so low heat and use a cloth between." She patted my arm. "You're a lifesaver. Whatever would this campaign do without you?" I steamed the dress she wore in that hotel room. Low heat, cloth between, and while the steamer hissed, I photographed the receipt tag still pinned inside the garment bag, because paper first, feelings later. Wednesday night, the study door didn't latch. Edgar was on the phone with his voice down in that smooth register he used for deals. I stopped in the hallway with a laundry basket on my hip, and I listened to my husband negotiate the end of my life. "After the equity vests, we file, clean and fast." A pause. "No, she gets the house payment she can't afford, the minivan, and the blender." He laughed at his own joke. "Trust me, she signs what I put in front of her." "She always has." Then his voice dropped lower, and what he said next actually made my hands go cold. "And if she gets a lawyer with a pulse, look at the statements. Grandview, 2 years, all her name, all her card. Spa days, champagne. My wife has expensive habits and I have the receipts. Who do you think a judge believes, the COO or the shopping addict?" He had not been sloppy. He had been building a paper trail with my name on it since the first Tuesday. The hotel, the points, the bookings. If I ever woke up and fought back, the record would say I was the one living a secret little luxury life. The furniture was also the alibi. I carried the laundry upstairs, folded every piece of it, and matched his socks in pairs. Then I sat on the edge of the tub with the fan on and shook for exactly 10 minutes. 10. When the fan clicked off, I was done shaking. It never came back. Thursday, I met Esther at a diner 2 towns over. She ordered pie and pushed the plate to the middle without asking if I wanted any. I told her about the phone call, the equity, the statements with my name. She stopped chewing. "That's not cheating," she said. "That's a demolition plan. He's been pouring the foundation for 2 years." She tapped her fork on the plate. "You need a lawyer yesterday." "Lawyers are Monday," I said. "Tell me about Saturday. You're working the gala." She was working the gala. Last big event before her department dissolved, and corporate wanted it flawless because Bradley Redmond rented both ballrooms and the terrace. Esther was personally running playback. 2 LED walls, house audio, and an 8-minute tribute video that Edgar's people had been revising all week. "Version 11 came in this morning," she said. 8 minutes of your husband's face in slow motion. I have to loop the last shot while they hand him the plaque. I watched it twice to set levels, and I wanted to bill him for my time on this earth. I looked at the pie. The question came out of me flat and even, like asking about the weather. Who loads the file? I do, Friday night, from the media server upstairs. She set the fork down. Her eyes narrowed slowly, and then, for the first time since I'd met her, Esther Sutton smiled all the way. "Why do you ask, Mrs. Parrish?" I didn't answer, and she didn't push. She wrote a phone number on a napkin, her personal cell, not the work one. "Think carefully," she said. "Then call me either way." I drove home with the napkin in my purse and my heart going like a hammer. And the house phone was ringing when I walked in. Edgar. Barking. He needed his navy pocket square located immediately. The videographer was coming at 6 to film candid family B-roll. And could I put out the good glasses and act natural? Act natural. A stranger moved my furniture and filmed us laughing at the kitchen island where I'd read the prisoner's menu 3 days before. Edgar squeezed my shoulder for the camera and called me his rock. Take after take. On the last take, he leaned in, smiled for the lens, and murmured through his teeth, "Straighten your collar. You look tired." The videographer left at 8. Edgar left at 9. "War room," he said. "Big weekend," he said. "Don't wait up." I did not wait up. I opened the laptop. The cloud had synced at 6:57 that evening while I was pouring wine for his B-roll. New folder. New videos, shot that same afternoon in room 1140, and this time I turned the sound on and made myself watch more than 4 seconds. Not for pain. For inventory, there was the room I was paying points on. There was the champagne that would show up on my statement. There was Meredith in the red dress I had steamed with a cloth between, doing a little spin for the camera he was holding. And then, at the end of the last clip, Edgar turned the camera on himself. Flushed, grinning, glass raised to his own reflection in the hotel mirror like the only person he ever toasted. "To Saturday," he said. "New title, new life." And Monday morning, papers to the little wife. "She'll cry, she'll sign, she'll keep the blender." Meredith's voice floated in from off camera, sweet as pie filling. "Don't be mean, baby, she irons so well." They laughed. The clip ended on a freeze frame of his raised glass. I sat in my dark kitchen with the laptop glowing and I played it once more. The gala was Saturday night. The papers were Monday. Whatever I was going to do, it had a deadline now, and the deadline was 2 days away. I took the napkin out of my purse and I dialed the number on it. Esther picked up on the second ring. No hello, just her voice, low and ready, like she'd been sitting by the phone the whole time. "Tell me you're not calling to cancel your linen order." "I have videos," I said. In his own words, his own camera. "I have 2 years of receipts and a booking history with my name where his should be." I looked at my reflection in the black kitchen window, chin up, hands together, grateful. And he has an 8-minute movie premiering Saturday on 2 very large screens. Silence on the line, 1 second, 2. "Mrs. Parrish," Esther said slowly, "are you asking what I think you're asking?" "He wanted a premiere," I said. "I want to change the feature." She exhaled long and slow, and I heard something in it that sounded a lot like 11 years of smiley face emails leaving her body at once. When she spoke again, her voice was all business. "Not on the phone. Tomorrow, 7 in the morning, service entrance. Bring the files on a clean drive." A pause. "And Helen, bring coffee. We're going to need it. That was the first time she called me Helen instead of Mrs. Parrish. It sounded like a door unlocking. I went upstairs, laid out Edgar's pressed tuxedo shirt, light starch, exactly the way item 3 demanded. Then I stood in the doorway of the guest room where the red dress hung in its bag like a flag on a conquered hill, and I said good night to it. 46 hours to the gala. 9 hours to the service entrance. And one little silver drive sitting in my purse next to a diner napkin, holding the end of Edgar Parrish's World in 9 gigabytes. He came home after midnight smelling like her perfume and asked if his shirt was ready. Then he stopped in the kitchen doorway and frowned at the counter. You moved my speech cards. I hadn't touched them. Meredith had, when she annexed the dining room. But he stood there and lectured me anyway, 2 minutes on respecting the process, jabbing the counter with one finger while her perfume came off his collar in waves. I apologized. I actually apologized. Then I squared his cards into a neat stack, set them by his keys, and wished him sweet dreams. His shirt was ready. Everything was almost ready. Friday, 1 day to the gala. 7 in the morning, and I brought 2 coffees to the Grandview service entrance, and Esther Sutton let me in through a steel door that smelled like laundry and diesel. The media room was upstairs, a closet full of blinking racks and one big monitor. She plugged in my silver drive and opened the folder. She watched maybe 15 seconds, jaw tight, then hit stop. Okay, she said, I believe you, put it away. Then she pulled up a different file. Version 11, Edgar's tribute reel, 8 minutes and 4 seconds of his face. Before we did anything, I made myself say it. Esther, this could put you in real trouble, splicing his video, using the house system. I stopped her hand on the mouse. I'm not going to let you burn your life down for mine. She looked at me for a second like I'd said something in a foreign language. Helen, she said, they already burned mine down. Quarterly email, smiley face, 11 years. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because I get to choose the last thing I ever play in this room. She put my hand back in my lap. But I appreciate you asking. Most people wouldn't. Then she got to work. The plan had one hard rule, and it was hers. The first 60 seconds had to be perfectly real. His real, untouched, exactly as his people made it. If it glitches in the first minute, the AV kids kill the feed and reboot, she said. Nobody panics over 1 minute of a man's own highlight reel. They panic when it keeps going. We need him relaxed. We need the room warm. We need Redmond clapping. She scrubbed to the 58-second mark. The cut happens here, after the applause line, before he says thank you. She built it as one file, 60 seconds of glossy Edgar, then a hard cut. Then my 9 gigabytes, trimmed by her to the parts with sound and faces and no doubt about who or what. No nudity that would get the feed killed on decency alone. Just a hotel room, a red dress, a man's voice, and a raised glass toasting the little wife. Decency shut off is my enemy too, she muttered, trimming. Too explicit, the system's content filter chokes and somebody reboots. We want damning, not blockable, faces, words, the toast. She looped the toast to the end. His words close it. Not mine. My phone buzzed on the desk. Edgar. I put it on speaker so Esther could hear what I lived with. Where are you? No hello. Picking up the head table linens, I said. Gold or ivory, you never told me. Ivory? And while you're out, my mother needs a ride to the venue at 4. The florist shorted us 2 centerpieces, and Meredith says your seat got moved to table 14 so the investors have sightlines. Don't make a thing of it. Table 14. He'd moved me twice now, first my sister, now me, and he'd said it like a demotion. Esther heard it too. She hung up my dignity for me silently by tapping a printed floor plan on the wall. Table 14 sat dead center of that ballroom, farthest from the stage, yes, and with a clean straight sightline to both screens, the podium, and every face in the room. He had exiled me to the best seat in the house. Ivory it is, I told him, and hung up. Esther tapped the floor plan. He did you a favor. From 14 you see everything and everyone sees you seeing it. She'd penciled the whole room already. Redmond and the board at table 1, front and center. Investors along the left. Edgar's mother, table 2. And behind the stage, the control booth, where a nervous kid named Marcus would sit Saturday night with his finger near the kill switch, not knowing the file had been changed. Marcus follows the cue sheet, Esther said. I write the cue sheet. As far as Marcus knows, he's playing version 11. He hits play, he watches the room, not the screen. She circled the booth. The only person who could stop it, After 60 seconds is me. And I'll be on the terrace feed by then, conveniently. I asked about the reboot. If they cut power to the wall, how long to bring it back? She almost laughed. That's the part he built for us. Redmond insisted on an encrypted playback package so the reel couldn't leak before the gala. Edgar's own security demand. Once it's playing off the local drive, you can't just yank a cable and swap it. The file's locked in the sequence and it loops. To kill it clean, they'd have to power down the whole media wall and reboot the server. 4 minutes minimum in front of 300 people. She smiled. He encrypted his own coffin. I got home at noon. Edgar's car was in the driveway 2 hours early. My stomach dropped. He was standing in the kitchen holding my laptop. Open. Your machine was on, he said. The screensaver had photos cycling. His voice was light, testing. There was a hotel room in there. Weird one. Everything in me went still. The cloud synced to my laptop too. I had forgotten. The photos folder cycled on the screensaver, and he'd seen a frame. I did not flinch. I walked to the counter, took the laptop from his hands, and glanced at the screen like it was a grocery ad. That's the Grandview, I said. Room 1140. I toured 3 suites for the after-party. Your mother can't do stairs, remember. I closed the lid. I was going to surprise you with the upgrade. It's on the house account. He blinked. The lie fit so neatly into his own arrogance that he couldn't see around it. Of course, his wife was booking suites for his big night. Of course, it was under her name. That was the whole architecture of how he saw me. Good, he said finally. Smart, put mother in it. Then he frowned. Why were you touring rooms in a bathrobe? Staff robe, I said. They give you one at the spa tour. I opened the fridge. Lunch. He let it go. He actually let it go. But an hour later, I heard him in the study on the phone with Meredith, voice low. She was in the cloud, might be nothing. Move anything sensitive off the shared account. Now, everything, and change the password on the real package so only Redmond's people have it. My blood went cold, then hot. If he wiped the shared cloud, I'd lose the source, but I had the silver drive. Esther had the cut file. He was locking a barn I'd already emptied. Then he added the part that made my hands curl. And call our guy about her spending. I want the statement summary printed and in my jacket Saturday. If she gets weepy Monday, I hand it to Redmond myself. My wife, the hotel habit, gets ahead of it. He was planning to smear me at his own party as insurance, carry the fake evidence in his tuxedo pocket. I stood in the hallway and understood there was no version of the next 48 hours where I sat still and survived it. Meredith came by at 4 with a garment bag and a problem. She wanted the suite, my suite, room 1140. Edgar mentioned you booked 1140, she said, setting her bag on my counter, taking my chair. The team needs a staging room. Hair, wardrobe, the whole prep. Just move his mother somewhere with a nice view of the parking lot. She won't know the difference. I poured her coffee. Cream, no sugar, the way she took it in my kitchen twice a week now. 1140 is spoken for, I said. Her smile went thin. Sweetie, this is a work night, not a family night. She checked her nails. Honestly, if you'd let the professionals handle the professional part, everyone's evening goes smoother. You'll be in the ballroom all evening anyway, I said. You wouldn't even use it. Something flickered behind her eyes. She stood, took her coffee with her, and left my mug in the sink again. From the door she called back, cheerful as a knife, "Where the gray? Nothing that photographs loud." 20 minutes later, Edgar called me from his car to tell me I'd been rude to a consultant and to remember whose night this was. I apologized to my husband for defending the hotel room he was cheating on me in. Then I went upstairs to hang his jacket and found the envelope in the inside pocket. 2 printed pages. Grandview Hotel, itemized 24 months, every charge in the name Helen Parrish. He'd already had it made. He was already carrying it. I photographed both pages, put the envelope back exactly as I found it, and smoothed the lapel flat. I called my sister, the one he'd crossed off the list. I didn't tell her everything, just enough. Come Saturday, I said. Stand near the back. Whatever happens on those screens, don't gasp, don't call my name. Just get me to my car after. Helen, she said, scared. What's on the screens? His speech, I said. Every word of it. Friday evening. Edgar rehearsed in the mirror one last time while I held the phone up at teleprompter height, arms burning, breathing quiet. He hit his applause line and paused for imaginary clapping, chin lifted, eyes shining at his own reflection. Right there, he said, not to me, to himself. That's the moment, that's where they stand up. He glanced at me in the mirror. You stand first. Don't forget your cue. I won't forget my cue, I said. He smiled at himself, satisfied. He never once looked at the woman holding the phone. At 9, while he showered, Esther tested the file on the wall. She called me from the dark ballroom with the sound off, whispering, I'm running it now. 60 seconds of him. Board room, ribbon, handshake, slow motion, the whole church. A pause, I could hear her breathing. Cut point coming. 3, 2. Then nothing for 4 full seconds. Esther. It's on the wall, she said, and her voice had gone strange and quiet. Helen, it's 20 feet tall. His face is 20 feet tall in that hotel room. Another pause. The audio's clean. You can hear every word he says. And the loops. Loops perfect. Ends on the toast, starts again on the toast. She let out a shaky laugh. I'm shutting it down. Nobody's in here but me and 100 stacked gold chairs, and I still feel like I just robbed a bank. I asked her if she wanted out. I told her I'd take the drive back, do it another way, some way that didn't cost her. Ask me one more time and I'll be insulted, she said. Go to bed, Helen. At 11, my own phone lit up on the nightstand. Esther, 1 line. Files loaded, locked in the sequence. 60 real, then the truth. Marcus has the cue sheet. It's live, sleep if you can. I did not sleep. I lay next to my husband while he snored the sleep of a man who had already won, and I stared at the ceiling and rehearsed one thing over and over. Not a speech. A face. Chin up, hands together. Grateful. The only cue I had left to hit was standing still while his whole life came down. Saturday came up gray and clear. Edgar was awake at 5, doing his applause line in the shower. At 7, he had a tantrum about his cufflinks. At 8, he told me the eggs were rubbery and pushed the plate away. At 9, his mother called to say she wasn't coming because her hip hurt, and he actually said, out loud, well, that's one less variable. At 10, Meredith texted me directly, not him, me, gray dress, flats if you get tired. And sweetie, don't drink tonight. I wore navy, not the gray. Navy with my grandmother's pearls, and I did my own hair at the kitchen table while Edgar practiced his humble face in the hall mirror. He didn't look at me once until we got to the car. Then he glanced over, frowned, and said, that's fine, that reads as quiet. 22 years, and my husband's last compliment to me was that I read as quiet. The grand view at 6 was gold and roaring. 300 people in black tie, champagne on trays, a jazz trio, and the 2 lead walls glowing with the Redmond Capital logo, 20 feet tall. Edgar walked into that room like a man stepping into a bath he'd been heating for 20 years. He was swallowed instantly. Shoulder claps, laughter, a photographer walking backward in front of him. Somebody's wife asked me if I was proud. Somebody's husband asked me to take his coat. I found table 14 on my own, dead center of the room. Clean sightline to the podium, both screens, and the control booth. Meredith arrived at 6:20 in navy. I saw her come through the doors and my whole body went still. Not red. Navy, almost the exact shade as mine, cut for a woman 10 years younger, and she stopped dead when she saw me across the room. She knew exactly why she wasn't wearing red tonight, and now she knew I might be looking at a mirror. She crossed to me fast, smile locked on, and gripped my forearm. Well, she said, through her teeth. Aren't we twins? I like navy, I said. It photographs quiet. Her nails pressed into my sleeve. Then she let go, smoothed her skirt, and went to table 9, 3 tables from the stage, close enough to be seen with the team and far enough to be nobody's wife. She sat down and set her phone face up in her lap. My sister came in at 6:30 and stood at the back bar the way I'd asked. She didn't wave. She just found my eyes across 300 people and gave me one small nod, and I could breathe again. Then Meredith gathered the team for a toast in the middle of the floor, loud enough for the tables around us. She raised her glass to Edgar. Then she turned and raised it to me. And to Helen, she announced, who ironed every shirt on that screen tonight. The people around her laughed. Ha ha, the good wife, the shirts. Edgar laughed too. He put his arm around Meredith's shoulders in front of the investors and said, she's not wrong. A waiter passing behind me flinched on my behalf. I drank my water and said nothing. 10 minutes later, Edgar found me by the ice sculpture and pulled the envelope halfway out of his inside pocket, just enough for me to see the corner of it. Don't do anything tonight, he said quietly, smiling for the room. Whatever you think you saw on that computer, There's a version of this where you keep your dignity, and there's a version where I hand this to Bradley. Your name, 2 years of hotel bills. Choose well. Then he squeezed my elbow, said smile honey, and went off to shake hands with the general counsel. Bradley Redmond found me at 6:40. Big man, white hair, one of those handshakes that swallows your whole hand. He'd known Edgar 11 years. Helen, he talks about you constantly, he lied kindly. Behind every man and all that. He'll have a night he never forgets, I said. Redmond laughed and moved on to the investors' table. He was seated at table 1, dead center front, with 4 board members and the general counsel, a small gray woman named on the seating card as legal. The company lawyer was going to watch the entire thing from 9 feet away. At 7, dinner. At 7:40, Edgar leaned over from table 1, where they'd seated him with the executives, and caught my eye across the room. He tapped his wrist and then pointed 2 fingers at me. Our signal. Don't forget your cue. I lifted my glass to him. He winked and turned back to Redmond. At 7:50, I went to the ladies' room and passed the service corridor. Esther was there in her work polo with a radio on her hip, coiling a cable that did not need coiling. She didn't look at me. She said one word to the cable, loaded. Then she walked out toward the terrace, where the overflow feed was, where she would spend the next hour with a perfect alibi and a radio she would not answer. At 8, the lights dropped. Redmond took the podium and talked for 6 minutes about vision and stewardship and the future of the firm. Then he said the sentence Edgar had waited 2 years for. It gives me enormous pleasure to name our next chief operating officer and my friend, Edgar Parrish. The room stood, I stood first. I hit my cue exactly. He came up the aisle shaking hands, kissing cheeks, one hand raised, and he took the stage like a man taking a country. He set his cards on the podium. He didn't need them. He'd run that speech 11 times in front of a mirror while his wife held the phone. 22 years ago, he began, I walked into this firm with a bad suit and a good idea. Laughter warm, the room loved him. He waited for it to settle, timing it exactly the way he'd timed it in our bedroom, and then he nodded at the booth. So rather than talk about myself all night, he said, let me show you. The screens lit up. There he was, 20 feet tall, walking a trading floor in slow motion, sleeves rolled, sunlight cutting the frame. Music underneath, strings and a low drum. Edgar shaking hands with a governor. Edgar cutting a ribbon. Edgar on a rooftop at dusk with the skyline behind him and the caption, Built ON Trust. 60 seconds. Real, glossy, perfect, exactly as his people made it. The room was warm. Redmond was smiling. A man at table 6 murmured, hell of a reel. Edgar stood at the podium half-turned to the screen, watching himself, and I have never in my life seen a man look so happy. At 58 seconds, the music swelled to its last chord. At 59, the screen went black. Half a second of black. Enough for a man at table 2 to start clapping, thinking it was the end. Then the sound came back, and it wasn't strings. It was a door closing. A hotel door, that heavy click and suck. The screens filled with a room. Cream walls, a wide bed, a card key on the dresser, and a number on the door plate behind him, huge and unmistakable, 1140. My husband's face swung into frame, flushed, filling 20 feet of LED wall, laughing at something off camera. And then a woman's voice, unmistakable, floated in from off-screen. Don't be mean, baby. She irons so well. The jazz trio stopped playing. Edgar was still turned to the screen with his mouth open in the shape of the next word of his speech. His hand was still raised. At table 9, Meredith Sawyer stood up so fast her chair went over. Nobody looked at her. Every face in that ballroom was tilted up at the wall, watching a man in a hotel robe pour champagne into 2 glasses. 2. And on the bed behind him, in perfect focus, a red cocktail dress, size 4. 300 people made the sound a room makes when it stops breathing. Then Edgar's voice came out of the house speakers, 20 feet tall, loud enough to shake the water glasses, saying the thing he said into a hotel mirror on Thursday afternoon. To Saturday. New title, new life. Somebody at table 1 said, oh my God. And Monday morning, papers to the little wife. She'll cry, she'll sign, she'll keep the blender. Bradley Redmond turned all the way around in his chair, not to look at the screen, to look at the stage, to look at Edgar. And Edgar Parrish finally turned his head and found me, table 14. Dead center, chin up, hands together. I did not smile. I did not stand. I sat there in my navy dress and I let my husband look at me while 300 of his colleagues listened to him promise a hotel room he'd be rid of me by Monday. He lunged for the podium mic. That's not, his voice cracked into the speakers and clipped, huge and ugly. Kill it. Kill IT. He waved both arms at the booth like a man on a runway. In the booth, Marcus was standing up with his headset half off, hitting keys, hitting them again, his face gray. A man at table 3 laughed, one short bark out of pure shock and then swallowed it. That was the only sound in the room besides my husband. Turn it off, Edgar shouted into the mic, and the speakers turned his own panic into thunder. He hit the podium with his fist. A water glass went over on the head table and nobody moved to catch it. Marcus's voice came scratching out of the house monitor, still keyed up by accident, high and young and terrified. It's locked in the sequence. It's the encrypted package. I can't, sir. I can't stop it without a full reboot. The encrypted package, the one Edgar himself had demanded, so the reel could never leak. 300 people heard the boy say it. The video did not stop. It cut back to the beginning of the room. The door. The click. The number on the plate. 1140. And Edgar's laughing face, coming back up the wall for the second time in front of the board, the investors, the general counsel, and the man who had just handed him a company. Somewhere near the doors, a woman in a navy dress was pushing toward the exit, phone clutched to her chest, and 3 men from the investor table had turned to watch her go. The screens looped. The champagne poured again. And my husband stood alone on that stage, under 20 feet of his own confession, with his hand still raised for the applause that was never coming. The video looped for the 3rd time. The door, the click, the plate on the wall, 1140, my husband's laughing face coming up that wall again like a tide that would not go out. Edgar came off the stage. He didn't take the stairs. He put one hand on the edge and vaulted down into the aisle, tuxedo jacket flying open, and he ran for the control booth in front of 300 people. Nobody stopped him. Nobody moved at all. They just turned their heads to follow him, the way you follow a car going off a bridge. He hit the booth door and yanked it. Marcus was already backing away from the console with both hands up, headset around his neck. Sir, I didn't load it. Edgar shoved him aside and started hitting keys himself. A man who did not know the difference between a media server and a microwave, stabbing at a keyboard while his affair played 20 feet tall behind him. He grabbed a cable and ripped it out of the rack. One of the screens stayed on. The other stayed on. Because the audio ran off the house system and the file was locked into the sequence. To Saturday, his own voice boomed over him, cheerful, drunk on itself. New title, new life. He screamed at the rack, actually screamed. And his voice came back at him from the speakers, calm and warm, saying, she'll cry, she'll sign, she'll keep the blender. At table 1, Bradley Redmond had not moved once. He sat with his hands folded on the tablecloth, watching the screen. The general counsel had her phone out, low, under the table's edge, and she was typing. The board member on Redmond's left leaned over and said something. Redmond shook his head. Once. Then he stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked out of the ballroom without looking at the stage. 12 investors watched him go. Then they started standing too, not all at once. Table by table. Chairs pushed back, napkins dropped on plates, a low tide of black tie moving toward the doors while my husband's voice kept promising, over and over, to have his little wife signed and gone by Monday. A woman at table 5 had her phone up, recording the screen. Then a man at table 8 had his up, then 6 phones, then 20. The room lit up with little rectangles and every one of them was pointed at the wall. That was the second the thing stopped being a scandal and became evidence you couldn't burn. The house lights came up hard at 8:11. Somebody in the back had found the master. The screens still glowed. The video still ran. And now, in full light, 300 people had nowhere to look but at each other. The general counsel got up, crossed to the booth, and took Edgar by the arm. She was half his size. She said something short. He tore his arm away and she said it again, and this time I heard it from 20 feet because the room was that quiet. Mr. Parrish, step away from the equipment. Now. That is not mine, he said. That is a fabrication, that is a deepfake. Somebody hacked me. He was pointing at the wall, at his own 20-foot face, his own voice, the room he had booked 31 times. That is a hack. The counsel looked at him for 2 full seconds. You're saying someone fabricated a video, she said. of a room the company has been billed for on your expense reports under client entertainment. Edgar's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She turned and walked away from him mid-sentence. That, more than anything else in that ballroom, was the moment I understood he was already over. She didn't argue. She just stopped spending time on him. Two men from the hotel's tech crew finally got to the rack at 8:15 and started the reboot. The full one. Power down the wall, power down the server, bring it back. 4 minutes. It takes 4 minutes. So for 4 more minutes in a fully lit ballroom with 300 people standing in their coats, the video kept playing because nobody could make it not play. The screens went dark one at a time, then came back up glowing with the boot logo, and then the audio finished its loop out of the house speakers anyway, disembodied, floating over the room. She'll cry, she'll sign, she'll keep the blender. A board member's wife at table 2 started laughing and couldn't stop, the awful kind, and her husband walked her out. Redmond's assistant came back into the ballroom while the reboot was still running. She went straight to the podium, and she picked up the crystal plaque that had been sitting there since 8 o'clock with Edgar Parrish, Chief Operating Officer, cut into it. She put it in a tote bag. She carried it out. She never looked at him. That was the promotion. 11 minutes of it, and the plaque went home in a canvas bag before the video even finished playing. Meredith never made it out the doors. 2 of the investors' wives had blocked the exit without meaning to, standing there staring at the screen, and Meredith Sawyer got stuck in the crush with her phone against her chest. And behind her, 20 feet tall, was her own voice. "Don't be mean, baby," she ironed so well. The wife next to her turned, looked at Meredith, looked back at the wall, looked at Meredith again. Somebody said, "That's her. That's her voice." Meredith spun around to face the room like a woman looking for an ally and found 300 faces and 40 phones. Someone's teenage son, dragged along in a rented tux, filmed her from 6 feet away. She put her hand up in front of her face. Too late. She'd already been standing in the doorway when her own voice came out of the ceiling. She shoved through the wives and ran. Her heels snapped in the lobby doorway, and she kept running with one shoe. The video reached the toast for the 5th time. My phone buzzed in my clutch. Edgar, calling me from 12 feet away, standing in the middle of that ballroom with a security guard walking toward him because it had finally occurred to him that the only person in the world who might still pick up was the furniture. I let it ring. He called again. I turned the phone face down on the tablecloth. Security came in at 8:19. 2 of them. Grandview blazers, radios, hands loose at their sides. They did not go to the booth. They went to Edgar. He was standing in the middle of the aisle he'd walked up as Chief Operating Officer 11 minutes earlier. His bow tie was hanging open. There was sweat through the back of his tuxedo shirt, the shirt I pressed with light starch, not medium. "Sir, we're going to ask you to come with us." "Do you know who I am?" He said it loud enough for the room. "Do you know who I am in this company?" The taller one didn't even change his tone. "Yes, sir. Mr. Redmond's office called down. We're to escort you out." Mr. Redmond's office. 11 minutes. Edgar looked around that ballroom for one friend. Just one. 11 years of Christmas parties, golf weekends, deals closed at 2 in the morning. 300 people in black tie, and not one of them met his eyes. Men he'd hired turned their backs. A guy he called his best friend at the firm looked at the floor and put his phone in his pocket. And on the wall behind him, on a loop, Edgar Parrish raised a champagne glass to himself in a hotel mirror. That was when he found me. I was still at table 14. I had not moved once. Not to record, not to run, not to gloat. My hands were folded in front of me on the ivory linen I had chosen myself that morning. He came at me down the aisle with a security guard on each arm, and his face went through about 4 things in 3 seconds. Rage, calculation, then the thing underneath all of it, which was fear. "Helen." He tried to make it warm. In front of the whole room, with his own voice booming out of the ceiling, he tried to make it warm. "Helen, honey, tell them. Tell them somebody hacked our account." Our account, 22 years of the furniture, and now it was our account. I stood up. I smoothed my navy dress. And I said the only thing I said to my husband in that ballroom, in a voice pitched to reach exactly as far as table 1. "Room 1140 is under my name, Edgar, so is the champagne, so are all 31 nights." I picked up my clutch. "You made sure of that." Somebody at the next table made a sound like they'd been punched. Edgar's knees actually went. The guard on his left had to hold him up, and when he sagged, the envelope came out of his inside jacket pocket. It hit the carpet and slid, and the 2 printed pages fanned out across the aisle at the feet of the general counsel. Grandview Hotel, 24 months, itemized. The name at the top of every line was mine. She bent down and picked them up before he could. She read the first page standing there in the middle of the ballroom, and I watched her eyes go down the column, and then up to him, and then down again. "You brought this with you tonight," she said. It wasn't a question. Edgar reached for the pages. She turned her shoulder and kept them. "He was going to give those to Bradley on Monday," I said, after I signed. The counsel folded the pages in half and put them in her own jacket. "Then they're mine now," she said. "The company was billed for that room, Mr. Parrish. That makes it ours." Somewhere behind me, an investor said very clearly, "He expensed it." That word went around that ballroom faster than anything on the screen. Not the affair, the expenses. The affair made them curious. The expense reports made them get their coats. I walked past him. I didn't hurry. I went up the aisle he'd run down, past table 1, past the empty chair where Bradley Redmond had been sitting, past the general counsel who was still typing, and she looked up as I passed and gave me one tiny nod, the kind a professional gives another professional. My sister was waiting at the doors with my coat already over her arm. Behind me, the video started again. The door, the click, the number on the plate. And a room full of people watching my husband's whole life play on a loop he could not turn off. He caught up to me in the lobby. The security guards let him go once he was out of the ballroom, and he came across that marble floor at me with his shirt untucked and his bow tie hanging and the gold chandeliers of the Grandview blazing over his head. My sister stepped between us. I put my hand on her arm and moved her aside. "Helen." He was breathing like a man who'd run upstairs. "Helen, we fix this. Tonight, you go back in there and you tell Bradley it was a hack. You tell them you saw the email from the security firm. He'll believe you. He likes you." "He likes me," I repeated. He does, he does." He grabbed at my hands. His were wet. 2 minutes, that's all it takes. You walk in there and say it, and this whole thing is a mistake. I looked at my husband, standing in a hotel lobby he had checked into 31 times with another woman, asking me to save him by lying to the man he'd stolen from. "I booked room 1140 for tonight," I said. "Your mother can't do stairs, remember." He went very still. "There's champagne in it," I said. "It's on the house account, and it's under my name because everything at this hotel is under my name. Congratulations, Edgar, you gave me 2 years of receipts." The color drained out of his face in stages. Neck, jaw, mouth. I watched a man do arithmetic and get the answer. "You," he said, "me." He looked at the ballroom doors, at the investors coming out in their coats, walking around us like we were a wet floor sign, at the general counsel crossing the lobby with 2 printed pages in her jacket, at the valet stand, where his car was, where his life used to be. Then Edgar Parrish leaned close to my ear, and my husband whispered 5 words to me. "You were supposed to clap." That was it, not sorry, not why, not who is she to you. 22 years of marriage, and the last honest thing he ever said to me was a complaint about my job at his party. I took my coat from my sister's arm and put it on. "I stood first," I said. "I always hit my cue." The elevator dinged behind him. I turned my back on my husband and walked out through the doors of the Grandview into the cold, and the last thing I heard in that lobby was Edgar shouting my name across the marble and the sound of nobody stopping to look. I did not go home. I went to room 1140. I sat on the end of the bed in my navy dress with my shoes off and the champagne unopened on the dresser, and I called the lawyer's after-hours line and left a message. Then I texted Esther 1 word. "Done." She sent back a photo an hour later. The Grandview ballroom, empty, gold chairs shoved every direction, tablecloths dragged, half the centerpieces on the floor, and the 2 lead walls dark and quiet at last. Her message said, "Last thing I ever played in that room, worth it." The video was online before midnight. 40 phones in that ballroom, and it took a little under 4 hours. By Sunday morning, it had a title on it that wasn't mine. By Sunday afternoon, somebody in the industry had put the audio over the firm's recruiting reel, and by Sunday night, my sister took my phone away from me because I kept refreshing it. His mother called me at 7 a.m. Sunday, hip and all. She had seen it. Her friend from church had seen it. Her friend from church's grandson had sent it to her with the sound on. "You should have handled this at home," she said. "He handled it at a hotel," I said, and I put the phone down on the counter while she was still talking, and I made my coffee, and when I came back, she had hung up. Bradley Redmond called me Sunday at 9 a.m. He did not ask how I was. He asked one question. Did the company pay for that room, Helen? 24 months of it, I said. It's in his expense notes as client entertainment. The general counsel has the summary. He printed it himself. There was a long pause on that line. Then he said, "Thank you," and hung up. Edgar was terminated at 4:11 p.m. Sunday. Not resigned. Terminated for cause, which is a phrase that matters, because it meant every share of unvested equity he'd waited 2 years for went back into the company like water down a drain. The promotion he rehearsed 11 times in front of a mirror lasted 11 minutes. The equity he was going to divorce me over lasted 20 hours. 24 hours after the gala, Edgar Parrish had no title, no job, no equity, no plaque, and a video of himself with 900,000 views on it. Meredith Sawyer lost the Redmond account Monday morning. She lost 2 more by Wednesday, because in that industry, a woman whose voice is on a viral tape saying, "She irons so well," is not a brand consultant anymore. She's a punchline. Her firm's website took her bio page down that Friday. She sent me one email. 3 paragraphs about how she never intended and how she was also lied to. I didn't read past the first line. I forwarded it to my attorney and blocked the address. There was an investigation. Of course there was. Edgar screamed sabotage to anyone who would still take his call, and on Monday the hotel opened a review into how that file got on that server. I did not sleep Monday night. I sat at my kitchen table with my phone in front of me, waiting for Esther's name to come up, waiting to find out what it had cost her. She called Tuesday at noon, and she was laughing so hard she had to start twice. "Helen, they closed it this morning." "Closed it how?" "Chain of custody," she said. "The playback package was encrypted, remember? Client's own security requirement, 1 password. And on Friday, your husband got scared about the cloud and made his people change that password so that only he and Redmond's team had it." She was wheezing. "So the only credentials on the file upload are his. The review says the client delivered the final cut himself. Hotel's not liable. Nobody on my crew touched a locked client package. Edgar had locked the door of his own coffin and kept the only key so nobody could tamper with it. He spent the next 3 weeks telling everyone he'd been hacked. The hotel's report said otherwise. Redmond's counsel had the report. And every time he said the word hacked in front of a lawyer, the lawyer wrote down the word expensed. Edgar came to the house on Tuesday with a bag from a hardware store. New locks. He'd bought new locks for a house I had already changed the locks on Monday morning at 7 a.m. with the receipt in my folder because paper first, feelings later. He stood on the porch he'd built and rang his own doorbell. I opened the door on the chain. He'd been drinking. He had his speech cards in his coat pocket, the actual cards, still stacked, and I could see the corner of them. "I have nowhere to go," he said. "You have room 1140, I said. "You know the way." He put his hand flat on the door, not hard, just there. 22 years, Helen. 31 nights, I said, and I closed the door. The divorce took 4 months instead of the 18 his lawyer promised him. It's difficult to argue that your wife has a hotel habit when the entire internet has watched you toast to giving her a blender. It's difficult to hide assets when the general counsel of your former employer is already auditing your expense reports for the same 2 years. His attorney stopped returning calls in month 2. I got the house. I got the accounts. I got the settlement, and I did not have to ask twice for any of it, because his lawyer knew exactly what a deposition would look like, with 900,000 people already knowing the answers. He tried one last thing at the final hearing. He stood up in a suit that no longer fit him and told the judge that his wife had orchestrated a public humiliation, that it was cruel, that it was calculated, that it destroyed his career. The judge looked over her glasses at him. "Mr. Parrish," she said, "did you record those videos?" He said yes. "Did you say those words?" He said yes. "Then your wife didn't destroy your career," she said, and went back to her papers. "She just stopped hiding it for you." Springdale is not a big town. That was the part he never planned for. The man at the hardware store where he bought those locks had already seen the video. So had the barber he'd used for 11 years. So had the golf club, which sent him a letter about his membership and used the word conduct. He tried 3 firms in the city that fall. 2 never called back. The third got as far as a second interview, and then somebody in that office typed his name into a search bar, and that was the end of Edgar Parrish in finance. He works 2 towns over now. Somebody told my sister he does compliance consulting out of a rented office above a nail salon. Compliance. Esther Sutton's department got dissolved on schedule, the way corporate promised in their email with the smiley face. She was out of work for 9 weeks. Then Grandview's biggest competitor hired her to run their entire event tech division. Because as it turns out, when your last job ends in the most talked about AV failure in the state, every single person in that business wants to hear the story from you. She sends me a text every year on the anniversary. Same 2 words, 60 seconds. I sold the red dress. It hung in that guest closet for a month, and then I took it to a consignment shop downtown and let a stranger buy it for $90, and I gave the $90 to the woman who cleans room 1140. I still have the silver drive. It's in the junk drawer where it started, under the batteries and the rubber bands. I don't watch it. I never needed to watch it. Because I already saw the only part that mattered, and I saw it in a ballroom in a navy dress from table 14, dead center of the room, with my chin up and my hands folded exactly the way he taught me. He asked me for one thing that night. He asked me to stand up first. I stood. Stories like this leave a few quiet truths behind. That the loudest man in the room is usually the one with the most to hide. That people who treat you like furniture never think to check what the furniture has seen. That the paper you gather in silence outlasts anything shouted from a stage. And that the person nobody notices in the room is the one who can end everything. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better? If you enjoyed this story, hit like and subscribe, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.